What if I told you a fierce, untamable stallion feared by every grown man at the auction was saved not by a seasoned trainer, but by a quiet 16-year-old girl? What she did next left the entire crowd utterly speechless. The auction yard was alive with a chaotic symphony of sounds and sensations. Dust billowed beneath the heavy boots of rough men, mingling with the sharp clang of iron gates and the restless neighs of horses confined behind worn wooden fences. The air was thick with anticipation, unease, and the bittersweet scent of hay mixed with sweat. It was the kind of place where the desperate and the determined converged, their motives diverse, but often weighed down by hardship. Among the throng stood Ellie, a 16-year-old girl, whose presence was as quiet and unassuming as a whisper amid the cacophony. Her dark eyes, steady and searching, seemed to take in everything: the anxious horses, the loud voices, the biting judgments exchanged by seasoned buyers. Beside her was June, her grandmother, a woman whose soft hands and calm demeanor contrasted sharply with the rough surroundings. June had brought Ellie here to this dusty crossroads of fate, not because she believed in auctions or wild horses, but because she understood what Ellie needed: a chance at healing that neither words nor time alone could provide. Ellie's story was etched deep in her silence. Just months before, a car accident had shattered her world, leaving her scarred with memories she refused to share. The vibrant girl who once danced through fields with abandon had retreated inward, her voice lost somewhere between pain and fear. Yet beneath that stillness lay a fire, a yearning to reclaim something broken, a spirit waiting to be rekindled. As they navigated the maze of pens and enclosures, Ellie's gaze settled on a stallion that seemed to embody the very essence of wildness and survival. Midnight, a name whispered among the auction staff with a mixture of respect and fear. His coat was the color of a moonless night, his powerful muscles taut beneath skin, marked with scars, the silent testament of battles fought long before he reached this place. His eyes, dark and endless, held stories not meant for casual observers. They were windows to a soul shaped by fear, anger, and countless betrayals. The crowd gave Midnight a wide berth. The handlers had tried and failed to tame him. They spoke of broken ribs, wild charges, and the kind of fury that turned men's blood cold. To them, Midnight was less a horse and more a force of nature, a tempest that could not be chained. But Ellie did not see the danger others saw. Instead, she saw a reflection of something she recognized in herself, a fierce, untamed spirit trapped and misunderstood. There was no bravado in her gaze, only a quiet resolve. When the auctioneer finally called out Midnight's lot number, a ripple of tension swept through the yard. No one stepped forward. The stallion stormed into the ring hooves, pounding nostrils, flared eyes wild. His screams echoed like a primal call to the heavens. The crowd recoiled, murmurs rising to accusations. Some called to have him put down for the safety of all. Ellie, however, rose from her seat. June's hand grasped her arm, a silent warning, but Ellie moved forward, her steps deliberate. Climbing the auction stand, she looked into the faces of those who doubted and spoke with a voice both soft and unyielding. "I'll bid." A hush fell. The air thickened with disbelief and skepticism. A girl, someone sneered. "That's madness." But Ellie's gaze remained fixed on Midnight, and with quiet courage she placed her bid. $100. A sum laughed at by seasoned bidders. Yet the auctioneer acknowledged it. The hammer came down, and in that moment Ellie bought freedom, not just for Midnight, but for herself as well. The journey home was enveloped in silence, broken only by the rumble of the truck and the heavy breaths of the stallion, restrained but restless in the trailer. Ellie sat close to the open back, her heart pounding in rhythm with Midnight's tense breaths. Neither spoke. Words were unnecessary. Each was processing a new chapter in their fractured lives. At the farm, an old relic of faded wood and rusted nails, Ellie led Midnight into a corral fenced with weathered boards that had seen better days. The stallion exploded out of the trailer, a whirlwind of power and panic. He ran frantic circles, testing the boundaries, his every movement a defiant roar against confinement. Ellie watched from behind the barn door, her hands trembling, not from fear, but from the weight of responsibility settling heavily on her shoulders. June joined her, carrying 2 steaming mugs of tea, offering warmth and quiet strength. "That horse is going to break something," June muttered, eyes full of concern. "Maybe," Ellie replied, voice steady despite the storm inside her. "But he's been broken longer than I can imagine." It's not about breaking him anymore. The night stretched on the farm, cloaked in silver moonlight. Ellie crept out of the house, slipping through the cool darkness to the corral. She perched silently on the top rail, watching Midnight stand alone, his breath misting in the cold air. No words passed between them. Instead, an unspoken understanding began to take root. Midnight's gaze met hers, and for the first time since that chaotic auction, the horse did not flinch or snarl. He lowered his massive head, slowly settling down on the ground, not fully at ease but willing to listen. Ellie whispered, "You don't have to trust me yet. Just know I'm here." The night held its breath, the world shrinking to the space between a girl and a stallion, two wounded souls daring to reach toward something new. In the silence, a fragile seed of hope was planted. As dawn painted the sky with soft pinks and golds, Ellie awoke with purpose. She slipped into her boots, already waiting by her bed, as if the night had been a brief pause rather than an end. Outside, the corral lay shrouded in a delicate mist, and Midnight stood like a statue in the distance. With deliberate steps, Ellie approached empty-handed, but full of resolve. Midnight's ears flicked, muscles coiled, but his eyes betrayed no panic, only cautious calculation. She crouched 10 feet away, patient, as the minutes stretched, her legs aching and fingers numb from the cold. Midnight snorted, stamped a hoof, but did not flee. Slowly, Ellie reached into her pocket, producing slices of apple. She placed them on the ground and stepped back. Midnight's nostrils twitched, suspicion wrestled with hunger. Then, with measured caution, he took a bite. The second followed. Ellie's breath caught in her throat. Behind her, June emerged, coffee in hand, watching with tired eyes. "He ate," Ellie said softly. June nodded, a small smile breaking through. Tiny progress, but progress. Ellie sensed something profound. Midnight wasn't wild out of cruelty or malice. He was wild because he had never been given a reason to trust, to believe safety was possible. Days turned into weeks as Ellie persisted with patience that bordered on reverence. She read aloud, sang softly, and let Midnight dictate the pace. Their bond deepened, not with commands or restraints, but with presence and respect. Ellie gave Midnight a name that spoke of resilience rather than defeat. "Midnight," she said, "because like the darkest night, you hold secrets no one else can see." This was only the beginning, but in that quiet farm under the vast sky, Ellie and Midnight took their first real breaths of freedom together. It was not a story of taming, but of understanding, two spirits learning to heal side by side. Ellie had always known that Midnight was no ordinary horse. From the moment she laid eyes on him at the auction, she sensed something profound beneath the wildness, a fractured spirit yearning for connection, but armored in layers of fear and mistrust. The days that followed their arrival at the old farm were nothing short of a crucible for both of them, testing patience, resilience, and the very nature of trust. Ellie's first attempts to reach Midnight were met with fierce resistance. The stallion was unpredictable, sometimes restless and explosive, other times withdrawn and wary. But Ellie understood that trust was not a commodity to be demanded or bought. It was a fragile thread woven slowly through consistent presence and respect. She refused to approach him with ropes or halters, knowing from stories and instinct that such force would only deepen the scars he bore. Instead, she adopted a different approach altogether, one rooted in quiet patience and gentle persistence. Each morning before the sun had fully risen, Ellie would sit just outside the corral, a book open in her lap, her voice soft but steady as she read aloud. The cadence of her words filled the cool air, a gentle river flowing into the stillness of Midnight's world. Though the stallion did not immediately respond, Ellie noticed subtle shifts, a flicker of attention, a slowing of breath, a tentative step closer to the fence. Her grandmother June watched from a distance, offering silent support in warm tea during breaks. June had seen many things in her long life, but even she was struck by the profound transformation unfolding before her eyes. Ellie, once a girl silenced by grief and fear, was discovering a new language, a way of healing through presence rather than possession. Over time, Ellie introduced small rituals to their daily routine. She hung wind chimes near the corral, their tinkling notes dancing on the breeze like a lullaby. She played classical music softly, its delicate harmonies weaving around the farmstead, breaking through the shadows that clung to Midnight's past. Each gesture was a tender invitation to trust, a beacon of calm in a world that had often been anything but. Perhaps the most poignant breakthrough came not from Ellie herself, but from an unexpected visitor. Bradley, a grizzled neighbor and former military man, had long held reservations about Ellie's project. To him, Midnight was a ticking time bomb, a dangerous animal best left to professionals. When he approached Ellie one afternoon, his voice was laced with concern and skepticism. "You're risking a lot, kid," Bradley said, eyes narrowing as he surveyed the restless stallion. "That horse isn't like the others. He's wild, dangerous. You can't tame that with kindness alone." Ellie met his gaze without fear. "I'm not trying to tame him. I'm trying to understand him." Bradley scoffed but stayed to watch. Over the weeks, even he could not deny the subtle changes taking place. Midnight's eyes, once blazing with distrust, softened in Ellie's presence. The furious energy that had defined him began to ebb, replaced by moments of stillness and tentative curiosity. One evening, as the sun dipped low behind the hills, Ellie extended a hand towards Midnight, an offering and a test. Her fingers trembled slightly as she waited. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then, with a slow, deliberate movement, Midnight lowered his great head and pressed his muzzle into her palm. The contact was electric, a bridge crossing the chasm of fear that had defined their relationship. In that moment, Ellie felt a surge of something profound, not victory, but connection. It was not the triumph of domination, but the fragile promise of mutual respect. For Midnight, it was a recognition that not all humans brought pain or betrayal. For Ellie, it was the rekindling of her own fractured spirit, a reflection of hope where there had once been only silence. Their journey was far from over. Each day brought new challenges, unexpected flinches, moments of doubt, and the ever-present risk of setbacks. But Ellie documented everything, meticulously filling journals with observations, feelings, and reflections. She knew that healing was a process measured not in leaps, but in inches. Ellie and June worked together to create a sanctuary for Midnight, transforming the dilapidated farm into a place of refuge. They repaired fences, cleared brush, and built spaces that encouraged calm and safety. The corral became a sacred ground, a place where trust could be rebuilt without pressure or expectation. Amidst this progress, Ellie discovered a new depth to her own strength. The very act of caring for Midnight began to heal the wounds she carried inside. His resilience mirrored her own, and the two grew inseparable in their shared journey toward wholeness. As the weeks passed, Ellie introduced small elements of training, not through force, but through invitation. She placed a halter on the fence near Midnight's stall, letting him investigate it in his own time. When he finally allowed her to slip the strap over his nose, a moment of triumph blossomed in her heart, tempered by the knowledge that trust was still fragile. Each success was a mosaic of tiny victories. Midnight allowing Ellie to brush his coat, accepting food from her hand, standing quietly beside her as the wind stirred the grass. These were the moments that defined their bond, moments that spoke louder than words. Yet Ellie remained humble. She knew Midnight's scars ran deep, both visible and unseen. His past was etched in muscle and memory, and their journey was not about perfection or conquest, but about patience and understanding. Ellie's transformation was no less remarkable. From a girl silenced by grief, she had become a quiet force, a patient, steadfast presence that embodied hope. Through her connection with Midnight, Ellie discovered a purpose that transcended pain, a mission to nurture the wild and wounded parts of both their souls. In this delicate dance between human and horse, Ellie learned that healing was not a destination, but a journey. And in every step forward, there was the quiet power of trust, a trust earned slowly, tenderly against the odds. The fragile peace Ellie had begun to build with Midnight soon faced its sternest test, not from the horse, but from the world beyond the fences of the farm. What had started as a quiet sanctuary for two wounded souls evolved into a battleground where fear, misunderstanding, and power converged in a way Ellie had never anticipated. Rumors began to swirl through the nearby town like wildfire. Whispers of a girl harboring a dangerous beast reached the ears of local officials, feeding the growing unease in a community already wary of anything that seemed untamed. The narrative was simple and harsh. Midnight was unpredictable. A liability, a threat that should be contained before someone got hurt. This message found traction in the minds of many, clouding judgment, with a potent mix of fear and suspicion. The arrival of Trevor Cross marked a turning point. A man whose polished appearance masked a sharp and calculating mind Trevor led a prominent horse rescue organization that had long wielded influence in matters of animal control and rehabilitation. When he first appeared at the farm's gate, Ellie was wary, sensing the undercurrent of an agenda hidden beneath his polite words. "We're here to help," Trevor said smoothly, surveying the farm with the practiced eye of a professional. "Midnight is a wild stallion with a history. It's only a matter of time before he harms someone or himself. We can offer him proper facilities, trained handlers, a chance at a safer life." Ellie's response was firm. "Midnight has a home here, and I'm his handler. We're making progress on our own terms." Trevor's smile thinned, revealing impatience beneath the veneer of civility. "With all due respect, this is not a matter of preference. The legal system can and will intervene if necessary." Ellie understood what that meant. The war was no longer about trust or healing. It was about control. The stakes were suddenly raised from the quiet fields of the farm to courtrooms and official hearings. Soon, Ellie and June found themselves besieged by formal notices and legal threats. The accusation was clear: Midnight was dangerous, and his presence on private property without adequate oversight violated regulations. The horse's very existence was under threat. But Ellie was not one to surrender easily. Drawing on a well of inner strength forged by pain and resilience, she launched a campaign that was as much about public perception as it was about legal defense. She called it "Runner, Let Midnight Heal," a story shared in snapshots, videos, and heartfelt narratives. Through social media and community outreach, Ellie unveiled the real Midnight, not a monster, but a survivor. Not a menace, but a being slowly learning to trust. Veterans who saw in Midnight's eyes the reflection of their own scars sent letters of support. Educators and therapists who recognized the power of healing through connection joined her cause. Parents whose children faced trauma saw in Midnight a symbol of hope. The campaign ignited a movement, drawing attention far beyond the small town. The farm became a beacon of what could be achieved with patience and compassion, a place where the wild and wounded could find sanctuary. Yet not everyone was swayed. Trevor and his organization mounted a formidable opposition, painting Ellie as naive, reckless, and endangering the community. Their arguments focused on liability precedent and the necessity of professional intervention. They called for Midnight's removal, citing public safety as the paramount concern. The conflict culminated in a public hearing held in a modest government building. Ellie stood before the board, flanked by her lawyer and June. Across the room sat Trevor, exuding confidence, accompanied by representatives from the rescue organization. Testimonies unfolded, some pre-recorded videos of Midnight's progress, expert opinions from veterinarians affirming his improving temperament, and heartfelt statements from community members who had witnessed Ellie's dedication. June spoke with quiet dignity, recounting the journey of care and hope that had transformed a dangerous stallion into a patient companion. When Ellie's turn came, she stepped forward not as a lawyer, but as a young woman who had poured her heart into a cause few understood. "I didn't save Midnight," she said, her voice steady despite the weight of the moment. "He saved me." She spoke of loss, of pain, and of the fragile hope that comes from refusing to give up. She described the silent conversations shared in moonlit corrals, the slow dance of trust that unfolded one hesitant step at a time. The room fell into a heavy silence. Ellie's words resonated because they came from a place of truth, raw and unfiltered. After hours of deliberation, the board returned with a verdict that echoed beyond the confines of the hearing room. They found insufficient cause to remove Midnight from Ellie's care, lifting the temporary suspension of custody. The decision was not merely legal, it was a recognition of the bond that had been forged through pain, patience, and unwavering commitment. Outside, the tension broke like a dam. Ellie collapsed to her knees on the courthouse steps, tears streaming freely as June knelt beside her, wrapping a steady arm around her shoulders. Back at the farm, Midnight awaited, ears pricked and eyes bright with recognition. When Ellie approached, he lowered his massive head and pressed it gently against her chest, a silent affirmation of their shared victory. But the battle had taken its toll. Ellie knew that the fight for Midnight's freedom was only the beginning. There were still eyes watching, waiting for a misstep, still whispers that threatened to unravel the fragile fabric of trust they had woven. Yet in that moment, as the sun dipped low and cast long shadows across the fields, Ellie felt a profound sense of purpose. This was no longer just about a wild horse or a scared girl. It was about standing for something larger, the belief that healing, however imperfect, was worth fighting for. That connection and compassion could challenge fear and suspicion, even in the harshest of places. Ellie's resolve hardened like the earth beneath her feet. Whatever storms lay ahead, she and Midnight would face them together, and in their shared strength, they would find the courage to endure. The victory in the courtroom was not an end, but a beginning, a fragile door opening to a future shaped by both hope and uncertainty. Ellie understood this deeply. Midnight's freedom was preserved, but their journey had transformed into something far greater than the fight for custody. It was now a shared mission to heal not only the wounds they bore, but to offer that healing to others who carried invisible scars. The farm, once a quiet refuge for a wild stallion and a silent girl, blossomed into a sanctuary for those seeking solace. Ellie, with the quiet determination that had carried her through the darkest days, began to envision a new purpose. Midnight was no longer merely a horse to be tamed. He was a living symbol of resilience, a patient companion who could listen without judgment and offer comfort without words. Local schools, hearing whispers of the remarkable bond between Ellie and Midnight, started to bring children with learning difficulties, anxiety, and trauma to the farm. These visits were not about spectacle or performance, but about presence and connection. Children would sit in small groups, their voices hesitant, at first reading aloud to Midnight as he stood still, his head lowered, eyes soft with understanding. For many of these children, it was the first time they had felt safe enough to speak, to be heard, without correction or impatience. Ellie watched as shy smiles replaced guarded expressions, as walls built by pain began to crumble. Midnight's calm presence became a mirror reflecting acceptance and trust back to each visitor. One day, Ellie received a letter from a single mother whose son had struggled with PTSD. The words inside spoke of gratitude and transformation, how the boy, once withdrawn and fearful, had found courage through the quiet companionship of a black stallion named Midnight. The letter was a testament to the ripple effect of healing, a reminder that their story was no longer theirs alone. In the quiet moments between visits, Ellie often found herself drawn to a weathered envelope she had discovered among her late mother's belongings, a letter penned in delicate handwriting, folded with care. Her mother's words reached across time, a message of hope, of courage, of the wisdom to choose the hard path because it was right. "My dearest Ellie," the letter began, "if you are reading this, I hope you have found the wild and wonderful something worth holding on to. Remember, strength is not in never falling, but in rising each time you do. Hold fast and never let go." Ellie placed the letter beside Midnight's stall, a silent vow to carry forward the legacy of love and resilience. Each morning, as the first light touched the fields, the letter caught the sun's rays, casting long shadows that seemed to stretch toward the future. The seasons changed, and with them, the rhythms of the farm settled into a new normal. Ellie and Midnight explored trails that wound through whispering trees and crossed shallow streams, their footsteps soft against the earth. Their rides were not about speed or competition, but about presence, breathing in the vastness of the open sky and the quiet strength of companionship. Ellie's voice became a steady anchor for Midnight, her words gentle commands and whispered encouragements, woven into the fabric of their shared days. She learned to read the subtle language of his movements, the slight tilt of an ear, the soft snort that meant contentment, the brief flicker of tension that signaled caution. Through it all, Ellie never lost sight of the fragility beneath the strength. She knew that trust once earned could be fragile as glass shattered by carelessness or fear. So she moved with patience, always mindful of the scars that Midnight carried and the scars she herself bore. Their bond grew deeper, a quiet testament to the power of persistence and love. Midnight was no longer a wild stallion to be feared, but a partner in healing, a reminder that even the most broken among us can find a way to stand tall. One evening, as the sun dipped low, casting a golden glow over the fields, Ellie sat beside Midnight in the soft grass. The air was thick with the scent of earth and wildflowers, a symphony of nature's quiet celebration. She reached out her hand, resting gently on Midnight's neck. "We've come a long way, haven't we?" she murmured. Midnight nuzzled her hand, a slow and deliberate gesture that spoke volumes. In that moment, Ellie felt the full weight of their journey, the battles fought, the fears faced, the victories won. It was not a tale of perfect endings, but of new beginnings, of lives intertwined by pain and hope, by wildness and tenderness. Ellie and Midnight had forged a path through darkness into light, not by conquering or controlling, but by trusting and staying. Their story was a reminder that sometimes the greatest strength lies not in taming the wild, but in embracing it. That healing is found not in perfection, but in presence. And that even the most broken souls can find a place to call home. In the quiet aftermath of the storm that was Ellie and Midnight's journey, one truth stands clear and undeniable. Healing is rarely a straight path. It twists and turns, falters and surges, and asks for more patience, faith and courage than we often believe we have. Ellie's story, intertwined with Midnight's, is a testament to this complex, beautiful, and sometimes painful process. It's a narrative that begins with brokenness, both visible and invisible, and blossoms into a shared testament of resilience, trust, and hope. From the dusty auction yard where Ellie first saw Midnight's wild-scarred form, to the courtroom where her quiet voice echoed against doubt and fear, every step was a battle against expectation and prejudice. Midnight was more than just a horse deemed untamable. He was a living symbol of survival, a creature misunderstood and feared because of what he carried within. Ellie herself, a girl wrestling with loss, and silence, saw not a monster but a kindred spirit, a wild soul in need of connection. Their journey was never about domination or control. Ellie never sought to break Midnight's spirit, but rather to meet it where it was with patience and respect. Through daily rituals of reading aloud, playing soft music, and simple acts of kindness, she built a fragile bridge of trust. The road was long and uncertain, peppered with setbacks and moments of doubt. Yet each small victory, an apple eaten from her hand, a halter accepted without panic, became a constellation of hope guiding their way forward. When outside forces threatened to tear that fragile world apart, Ellie's courage was tested anew. The legal battle was not only a fight for Midnight's custody, but a broader struggle against fear, misunderstanding, and the impulse to control what we do not understand. Her campaign, "Wash Your Let Midnight Heal," became a rallying cry for empathy and the recognition that healing often requires space, patience, and belief in the seemingly impossible. But perhaps the most profound lesson from Ellie and Midnight's story is that healing is not a solitary act. It is a shared journey between people, between species, and between brokenness and wholeness. Ellie's transformation from a silent grieving girl into a beacon of hope was mirrored by Midnight's slow emergence from wildness to trust. Together, they forged a bond that transcended fear and spoke to the universal human need for connection and acceptance. For all of us watching from the sidelines, their story holds deep relevance. Life inevitably brings hardships, loss, trauma, fear, and doubt that threaten to harden our hearts and isolate us from the world. Ellie and Midnight remind us that within those struggles lies the potential for profound growth, that the path to healing often begins not with grand gestures, but with quiet presence and unwavering commitment. They show us that even when the world seems hostile, and when others doubt our capacity to change or be changed, the persistence to hold on and the courage to trust can create miracles. So what can we take away from Ellie and Midnight's journey? First, the importance of patience, not just with others, but with ourselves. Healing cannot be rushed. It requires grace and acceptance that progress may be slow, imperfect, and at times barely visible. Second, the power of empathy and understanding, especially toward those who seem wild, broken, or difficult. Often what we perceive as problems are cries for connection, safety, and acceptance. Third, the strength found in community, the way shared stories, support, and belief can uplift and sustain us in times of hardship. Applying these lessons to our own lives means cultivating spaces where healing is possible. It means approaching others with kindness rather than judgment, listening with open hearts, and standing firm in our commitment to growth and connection. Whether it's supporting a friend through a difficult time, caring for someone or something misunderstood, or simply choosing to believe in the possibility of change, Ellie and Midnight's story is a call to action, a reminder that we all have the power to be part of healing, whether in small acts or monumental battles. If this story has touched your heart, inspired your spirit, or opened your eyes to the profound beauty of resilience and connection, I invite you to join our community. Subscribe to the channel to support more stories like Ellie and Midnight's stories that celebrate hope, courage, in the indomitable human and animal spirit. Your subscription fuels our motivation to keep sharing, to keep exploring, and to keep shining a light on the stories that remind us what it means to truly heal and belong. Thank you for being part of this journey. Together, we can continue to inspire, uplift, and remind the world that even in the wildest darkness, there is light to be found, one story, one connection, one moment of trust at a time.